We're at 2 o'clock.
Okay, so stream is live. So give it, I don't know, 30 seconds to populate maybe.
I'm going to share.
I'm not going to let us just do it from here. Let's try
Welcome. Thank you for showing up.
Now we all
So share, but you don't want to share it. I want to share it to the group. Page? Let's take the liberty. Okay, so whatever you want to say and then hit post.
Okay.
You should go.
Well, in case you
I just need to make sure this stays on.
No, it should just go check your Facebook page.
Yeah, but make sure that it doesn't.
All you did was share a link, basically.
But make sure that my battery doesn't run dead, right?
That doesn't even matter because you're not streaming that. So now anybody who goes on here will click it, and it should just pull up. Yeah, it's connected to.
Got it.
Let me see if it. To see if it shows that back in the house. What did you show me?
Yes.
Hey, can you all hear me in the back? That was sorry. All right, we're going to get started. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. And I'd like to thank the elders of the church for giving us a place to have this meeting. We want to get started on time. We know that it's a busy day for everybody, so even though we might have some stragglers, we'll just help them get in if they come in late. If you guys need to use the bathroom, it's behind this door over here. Help yourself. I'm going to talk about some things after Brian leads us in an opening prayer and try to take the meeting as best I can. We're going to be talking from this area over here. But after we do the introductions and the prayer, we're going to watch a video. And It's a video that I really want everybody to hear and see. It's from a group that I've been engaging in for a few years, and I think you can get a lot out of it. And I think it leads into a lot of the discussion that's going to go on today at this meeting. So without further ado, I will have Brian do an opening prayer, and then we'll stop. I want you guys to know we're going to stop town hall style periodically through the meeting, and we can hand the microphone to you, and you guys can all talk. It's going to be very participated.
Let's go to our Holy Father in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for the time that you've given us to come together and to learn about these things that affect our community and affect every one of us. We ask, Father, that you will bless the efforts that we make, and that you'll watch over each and every one of us as we try to do the right thing. Bless this meeting, bless the effort that we're making. In Jesus' name we all pray. Amen.
Thank you, brother. So I thought I'd introduce myself a little bit and give you guys a background and tee up something that I learned in business over the last 25 years. I had the pleasure of working for a full-bird colonel that was retired from the Army. He was a logistics colonel. He worked for a 3-star General Gus Pagones. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's got a book out there called Moving Mountains. And Mike reported to Gus, and those men reported to General Norman Schwarzkopf, 4-star general, executed Desert Storm 1991. They were all logisticians. They brought the men, they brought the weapons, they brought the food, and they did it all on the run. And they executed one of the biggest logistics challenges in 48 hours, 72 hours that we've ever seen. Great men. They retired out of the military, and they went to work in private industry, and I ended up working for them. And so I learned a couple of things. And I'm going to give you those 2 things that I learned from them that help us to lead one of the most productive, successful logistics organization that Sears had ever seen. It was the organization that still resonates today in other companies because they took our talent to Amazon and Walmart. There's 2 rules of leadership under Schwarzkopf, and this was in the military, so it's command and control. We'll borrow it because we shall not steal. We'll borrow this and we'll share it with you guys. Very simple, and it can be used in every organization, every business, on the playground. It's really simple, and it comes down to this. When you're in charge of something, you take charge of what that is. You own it. You take charge, you lead from the front. There's no leading from behind. You lead from the front. So you have to own it. The number 1 thing, take charge. Number 2, and the most important part of this is do the right thing. Do the right thing. These are the only 2 rules that these men carried into battle. And it was important as we worked through that. Gus used to say this. He said, communication in the ranks, when people's lives are at stake and you're serving people, it's top down. It's bottom up, and it's sideways too. And every member of our organization all had to have the full courage to lead, take charge, and do the right thing. And that goes for every single person in every organization, everywhere. And this is what the Bible tells us too. So it works. You have to have the moral courage to stand up to somebody and say, that's the wrong thing, somebody's going to get killed. That's the wrong thing, that's unsafe. And you have to be heard. We didn't play follow the leader. Right now, we have a whole world that's playing follow the leader. That doesn't work. So we're going to watch a video. Just remember those 2 rules that work everywhere. Use them, borrow it, use it, and it's empowering to people. It helps you to grow leadership. Helps you to empower people to take on projects, and then if they make a mistake, you help them through it. And then it helps the people that you're serving help you to be a better leader. But we're not seeing that today, so we're getting together in a town hall meeting to talk about some things that are going on in our city, which is really important, our county, very important. It's going on around the whole world, but we can only focus on what we can control. So we're going to work on that here today as a group, as a family, to try to do the right thing.
All right, let's
is not an academic exercise. Toying. To be upfront at the outset this evening, my talk is not addressing hypotheticals. It's not an academic exercise, speculative scenarios. Rather, I'm going to be addressing our present reality, which is the fact that the capital has fallen. I need to first, tyrants are unrestrained by law or the Constitution. Secondly, they have usurped their authority and therefore they rule without To be upfront at the outset this evening, my talk is not addressing hypotheticals. It's not an academic exercise, toying with speculative scenarios. Rather, I'm going to be addressing our present reality, which is the fact that the capital has fallen. I need to first start by defining the word tyrant. Tyrants are unrestrained by law or the Constitution. Secondly, they have usurped their authority and therefore they rule without legal right. And thirdly, they exercise their power oppressively. Whether elders realize it or not, their role in pulling back our nation from the brink of destruction is massive. When elders fail, the church fails. And when the church fails, the nation falls. Elders in these days need to address an historical problem. What do I mean by that? Studied the history of the Western Church with respect to its understanding about Christianity and the political realm. You would have noticed that the majority consensus has been that Christianity and politics, they do not and they ought not to mix. Which means that the salt and light of God's word has not been vigorously applied to the political realm, and thus darkness has flourished. Another problem or obstacle that elders need to address is the misunderstanding. Even the Zimbabwean tyrant Robert Mugabe used the misunderstanding of Romans 13 to keep the church subjugated under his boot. There is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are ordained of God. Therefore, he who resists the authority resists the ordinance of God. Therefore, I'm untouchable, right? Romans 13, 1 and 2, that's how Mugabe used it. He smugly quoted these verses while he literally fulfilled George Orwell's vision of the future in his book 1984, which is a boot stamping on a human face forever. Romans 13 gives legitimacy to government. It shows us what God has ordained them to be. But people don't ask the question, unto what end did God ordain government? And Romans 13 answers that question itself. It's for the good of the people. That ordained authority is God's minister, diakonos, God's servant to the people for good. And again it repeats, it is God's servant, diakonos, to carry out vengeance against him who practices evil. That's what God ordained governmental authority to be and to do. And servants do not have the right to choose what they are going to do on their own. Even Adam and Eve, in their state of perfection, were not allowed to determine or define good and evil for themselves. So how ridiculous is the suggestion that God ordained this structure, this government, whereby he set up sinful humans and gave them authority to define good and evil for themselves. And no matter how depraved their definitions were, it would be sinful to resist their despotism. God not only ordained the governmental structures, he also ordained the responsibilities that those structures have to follow. And there's no time to go into too many of those details. But they are bound to those structures. They are not a law unto themselves. God did not give them a blank check. Only God is allowed to define right and wrong. And everyone who contradicts his definition of right and wrong is at war with his kingdom. Elders need to embrace the fact that they are lesser magistrates in the sense that they have been elected to represent and serve church members. They have been called to protect, they have been called to instruct, and they have been called to lead them into the fullness of Christ Jesus, who possesses all authority in heaven and on earth. And elders need to help their people apply the dusty details of life in their everyday living, and not only have them praying for, but also striving by faith for the will of the Lord to be done on earth as it is in heaven. Elders also need to be instructing their people about the purpose of law and the Constitution. Our Constitution exists to protect inalienable reality, which includes life, liberty, and property. These are inalienable rights. These rights do not come from law, they come from God. And our Constitution acknowledges this fact. The Constitution exists to defend what is ours already by God's ordering. Elders also need to help their people compare current policies and practices with the Constitution and recognize how out of sync so many of them are. When a government does not equally protect everyone's life, liberty, and property, they are manifesting tyranny. When a government does not defend its borders, that is an act of tyranny against the citizens of their nation. Tyrants protect themselves, but threaten the lives, liberties, and properties of law-abiding citizens. Tyrants manipulate and control through lies, threats, and fear, all of which have been implemented and unleashed against us in the lockdown, mask, and vaccine mandates. All of this is a story of propaganda that is spewed by their tag team, that is made up of governmental agencies, by the mainstream media, and by the social media platforms that censor any alternative narrative. What do we call it when judges treat the Constitution as an evolving document and change its meaning on their own whim? That's tyranny. Elders must point to people and show them the gravity of the situation that they're in, and help them understand the amount of lies that they're being bombarded with. They have to show them that they need to be able to navigate this mass surveillance of lies. In order to illustrate how massive these lies are, let me try and use as an illustration the theory of evolution with respect to the scope and the reach of lies. Think about it. The theory of evolution is promoted as science in almost every school, college, university, museum, natural phenomenon throughout the whole world, and yet it has no substantial science backing it up. They would never be able to get away with that, right? And evolution is not alone in this. We have so many things being thrown at us, and then claims are made, and then they are backed up by the slogan, trust the science, when real science is not allowed to evaluate the claims. How many mandates are flung in our direction in the name of science, but you do not have sustainable and provable scientific studies backing them up? Elders need to train their people to think. They need to tell them to challenge everything. And they need to tell them to do their own research, because the key component of tyranny is propaganda. And the mainstream media in our nation today is the most diabolical propaganda machine that the world has ever seen. Elders must help their people navigate this torrent of lies. They need to tell their people they have a duty to resist. It is their responsibility, and they need to strengthen them in their resolve to do so. Paul said, and having done all to stand, stand. Iron resolve is required. And we need to stand. Tyrants need to be resisted, because they never, once they've revealed their hand, they never pull back. They only ratchet up the tyranny unless they are resisted. The only reason tyrants, or the only thing tyrants want to do is to retain power. They want to gain it and retain power. Robert Mugabe decimated the farmers in Zimbabwe, turning a nation that once exported food into a nation that required aid to prevent millions of people from starving to death. Why did he do that? In order to retain his grasp on power. Tyrants' damage comes upon a nation. They don't care what suffering their people go through, as long as they can retain their grasp on power. That's all they care about. Likewise, a government that encourages a migrant invasion is doing so because they think that is the only way they can retain their grasp on power. And any sane person looking on that knows that that is an act of tyranny. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. Psalm 24:1. Elders or leaders in the Lord's army, and they, like David, need to be filled with indignation. when they see tyrants defying the arms of the living God. There is only a window of opportunity, and it's not very big, in order to oppose the momentum that tyrants have once they start moving. We are resisting a self-conscious agenda to destroy our nation. There's no one action that fits all when it comes to resistance. This is what we do need to know. We need to know where our nation is at. We need to be resolved that we have to defend our constitutional republic, and we need to have great courage. Elders need to be leading from the front. They need to be prepared to lay down their lives for the cause of righteousness and truth, and exhorting others to do the same. Tyranny has revealed its head, and now there are only two options available to every American. They either join with the tyrants or they resist the tyrants. To choose a path of neutrality is to join with the tyrants. Elders need to be telling their people that they have been raised up at this time, and with respect to their callings, they have been raised up in those callings for this time. And they are not to hide their light, but to let it shine, expose the evilness, doing good, promoting the truth. And those who are in positions of authority whereby they implement the orders of others, they need to understand that there is no justification for enforcing unrighteous laws. Whether you're or in the National Guard, whatever, there is no justification for enforcing injustice. How did the excuse, "I was only following orders," play out at Nuremberg? There's a great weight on the shoulders of elders. But they have been raised up for this time, and they, together with every believer, have to respond to Joshua's challenge. Choose you this day whom you are going to serve. And history will look back on these times, and they will make a distinction, the historians will. They'll make a distinction between those shepherds that were prepared to give their lives for the sake of the sheep, and those hirelings who fled when they saw the wolf, and they left the sheep unprotected. Jesus Christ is not only the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And the tribe of Judah led the nation into battle. Finally, if such a time should arise when all the lesser magistrates have failed to protect we the people, then we the people have the God-given authority to protect themselves. Hence the provision in the Second Amendment, which tyrants hate because it threatens their agenda. Elders, tell your people God is in control. Tell them patriots are the majority. Tell them truth wins, and prepare them for the battle of their lives. I will end with a quote attributed to a John Wayne movie, where he was a hardened warrior and they were preparing to ride into battle. And the young man said to him, "Are you scared?" And he replied, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." May God have mercy on us all, and thank you for listening.
Testing. Sorry about the audio and the visual. We got a bunk laptop up here. Very powerful, right?
That's right.
This just came out. This is a week old, maybe 2 weeks old. These guys have been working on this stuff for a long time. I've been following them. It's biblical truth. We have to stop being politically correct and start being biblically correct. We got here being politically correct. So we can open up and talk about this, and I'd be happy if somebody wants to have a sidebar after and into some deeper conversations. But you might think you're tough, right? He talks about John Wayne. But there's really no such thing as tough. There's either the trained or the untrained. And we study Scripture every week in this room at 9 a.m. We're studying Acts. We're studying Joshua tonight at 6 p.m. He just quoted Joshua, choose whom you will serve. We are trying to raise the awareness with our church. And we would invite all of you to join us and study with us. This is a very important time for all of us. And remember, if you do the right thing, whether it's in the church or in the city or in any organization, at the hospital board or school board, they have to do the right thing. And you have to go and say, hey, do the right thing. And if they don't do the right thing, then you need to replace them.
Yes.
It's no more complicated than that. I know that Josh has a good agenda here today. I wanted to tee it off with this, just a teaser, but also very seriousness of the situation that we're in, to get everybody the right idea and the right attitude about the courage and the conviction that we're going to have to fight this battle. But it's going to take all of us, not one thing. And it's going to be a long, drawn-out thing. I hope it's not 40 years in the desert. It might be. We might have to go and paint some things red and hope that the plagues pass over. I'm not sure what's next. But we want to have a conversation today. We want to open it up, and Josh is going to give some tools and some training and some other things that maybe outside of Scripture.
Yes, we're actually going to go back to our founders today. James is going to bring that in. So thank you, I appreciate that. My name is Josh Fowler. And I loved how he started us off, because that was truth. And that's what we need to be speaking from here forward, nothing but truth. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is we started this whole agenda off today with a macro view. Okay, so this is a 30,000-foot view, and that's what I'm going to go into today. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the microscope on, and we're going to really narrow it down to local politics, okay? So that way you guys can really see the power of what's going on and maybe put some things together. See if that clicks. If not, you want to click it for me over there? I think you just have to hit the sideways button. There we go. Has anybody ever read this book here? Any hands out there? One? Okay. Well, so good. We're going to have some education today. So what we have is, this is a book that was by Drew and Williams, and what they were able to do is they found patterns within human behavior. Okay? And the reason why this is important, because I was able to take this book, do some timelines with it, and I can tell you what's happening right now based off of 3,000 years history, okay? So what they did is they found in 1963, that was a fulcrum point, okay? So a pendulum is something that will swing from one side, and then it gets to an extreme, and then the weight comes back down and goes to the other side, correct? So what happened was, in 1963, who can tell me what was going on during that time? Any ideas?
Kennedy was good.
Yeah, Kennedy. You had Kennedy in office. What you got?
That's when they took the Bible out of church
Took
or out of school.
the Bible out of school. That was interesting. I don't know that one.
64.
Vietnam War. That was 63. So think about the time period. Think about what was going on. Also, Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech, 1963. Civil rights movement's moving, right? And so, but what was happening, people were coming together. When you're in the fulcrum point, which is straight down the middle, that's when we're the most united as a country, okay? So then what happens in 1963, we started ticking towards the other side. So we have two extremes. We have the me side, okay? And then on the other side, we have the we side, collectivism, okay? So what occurred is starting, if you guys just go back through it, 1963, we start ticking this direction, right? And we start going towards the me. Everybody has to own a house, right? We got the years of the entrepreneurialism coming in, the Reagan years start coming, we're also going into a Cold War with Russia, okay? All these things are coming up, and then all of a sudden, we hit this fulcrum point at 20 years, and then we start sliding back towards the middle again, okay? And that's a 40-year turn from one side to the other. So as we start sliding back, I mean, if I remember the 80s were great. You know, the Simpsons came on board, right? That was great. Then we got into the 90s. The 90s was, I want to go back to the 90s because Friends was on air, you had Seinfeld. You know, it was a good time. But that's when they started bringing in a different way of thinking, trying, hey, let's just balance out politics. But if you want to think about it, look at pop culture through the years, right? That tells you what's going on and how they value sexuality, wealth, all that kind of stuff. So as we start coming back here towards the fulcrum, it was 2003, so we were back in the middle again, okay? So that means now we have to start going to the other side, okay? The movement's going, the culture's driving us that direction, and so we start to move this direction, and if you start thinking about what's happening, is that as we start moving away, we start getting away from our value system. We start getting away from individual rights, right? Because that's the me side. And so as we start moving in this direction, you know, there's a lot of demoralization going on within our country. And we start having to accept things, being politically correct, right? I don't want to offend people. And I understand that. I mean, I was one of the people, I don't want to offend people, but now we have to speak truth, okay? We have no choice. It's our duty. So by the time we got over here about 2012-ish or so, we're sitting here and we're looking at a culture that is being demoralized. We are publicly apologizing for being who we are. And we are good people. We know we are good people. We all come together, and this has nothing to do with race. We are absolutely the best country there is. And I know for a fact that Porterville is one of the best places to live. We all get along here. And that is why I decided that I'm going to sit here and stand and fight. I'm going to stand right here. I'm going to do it in Tulare County. So what we decided to do is, so we start seeing this tick move, but something strange happened in 2016. Okay? Something that wasn't supposed to happen. Because everybody was in this collective movement, right? Everything was in this way. Everything is pushing us this direction. And then all of a sudden we had an elected official that came in and started changing the narrative to saying America first. Right? And I want you to think about what I'm talking about here. So he's coming in, America first, and we're all sitting back thinking, I like that idea. That sounds pretty good. You're right. You know, no one should tell you what to do. We start to try to get entrepreneurialism back. We start changing the policies of the country, but did the country as a whole accept it? Especially through the mainstream narrative, right? We are still pushing towards the we, right? It wasn't really designed to actually take effect. And then whenever 2020 happened, it sent things into overdrive that has to make us all be concerned, okay? And here's why. In 2020, that's when the quote-unquote pandemic came in, right? Now, what it did is it took that weak moment, or that resistance that it was trying to drive through, and it just, we broke through it, okay? So no longer are we trying to get back to the me, we are full throttle going to the we now, right? And what I saw, and I think all you guys are with me, is in the first 6 months of this new administration, they had the foot on the accelerator. Would you guys agree? Yes. Okay. So that gave me enough concern to say something is definitely wrong. And I started putting things together because, go ahead and click that next slide for me, I appreciate it. What I started to see is I started putting my thoughts together to where when we start looking at I call this subversion, right, of our ideals of who we are. This is a Cold War type of concept. So when we were starting to shift in our movement, this is what demoralization of nations are coming. There's 4 phases to this. I'm going to give you the power for it. That's what this whole thing's about. I'm going to give you the power for it and what to look out for. And then I'm going to give you the power for it. How do we overcome it? And then I'm going to give you 4 things that should be your guiding compass going forward. Okay, that's what the whole point of this conversation is today. So we saw the demoralization of a nation, and then we get into destabilization. So go ahead and hit that next slide, please. And these are going to go. I'm going to go through these quick, so that way we get everybody in. So again, when we talk about demoralization, it chips away at our identity, right? It takes away the fabric. You're going to hear things like critical theory. Critical theory is a Marxist idea that is designed to destroy the fabrics of our society. Go ahead, sir. So when we get into destabilization, something to look out for, and this is what the pastor was just talking about up there. He says that this can happen within 2 to 5 years. Okay, within 2 to 5 years, destabilization can happen, and then things change, and that's what we have to watch out for. So let me ask you right now, if I were to ask you, does your world feel like it's being destabilized, what would your answer be?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are in this right now. We cannot turn a blind eye to it. That's why we're pushing forward. If you your school boards right now, they are not listening to you, period. Okay? You go to your city councils, they are not listening to you, period. Okay? We do not live in a world that they're listening to the people anymore. This is why we must stand up and push. The other thing we were talking about is privacy. We used to respect each other's privacy, right? And somehow, in this we movement, we were able to throw privacy right out the window. I don't walk up to you and ask somebody, hey, do you have STD? You don't ask people their medical information. That doesn't make any sense. We got to get back to a point to where we end up respecting each other's privacy. Okay, sir. So, there's 4 things that are going to happen to us. The next is crisis. What has happened in 2020, I want to make sure you guys catch this. This has already occurred one time to us, and it has shifted our culture. When a crisis comes out, it was 15 days to stop the spread, right? As soon as we accepted that, by May, what was happening? You have to wear a mask now. We're telling you. We're not advising you. We're telling you. Right? So we start to tolerate. So then, go ahead and hit the next slide. And what did the mainstream media say? Hey, I think we entered into a period of our new normal. They said that. And when I heard that, I thought, holy no. I'm sorry. I will respect this hall. I'm sorry. But I thought to myself, I'm like, this is happening. We are just now shifted into a whole new realm. And I know where the culture is heading. So what this tells us is we got to get our alarms up. We got to start ringing the bell, and we got to start telling people, hey, you know what? We can't control what's going on in our nation's capital. It's too far away. It means nothing to us. We can't really even control what's going on at the state. We can try, but it doesn't really matter, right? All we can control is our local government, because at the end of the day, the people that we are going to rely on are each other, right? Push come to shove, we're going to be right. So remember this. We get what we tolerate, period. Period. So going forward, we're talking about 4 things, right, in order to stabilize, right, because we're in destabilization mode. This is how we beat them, okay? Next slide, please. Face our fears, okay? I see today people still scared. Not in this room. These are lions, I get that, right? But what we're looking for is more lions. And when you lead by example, people will follow. Lisa will start asking questions like, wait a minute, if this virus is so scary, why are they walking around without a mask? That's all we got to do is lead by example. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually challenge people. You know what I mean? We're going to challenge the people and say, hey, stop it. Stop taking away our rights. This has turned into the civil rights of our lifetime. There is no doubt about it. And I did not know this when I started fighting this back in August. I thought this was just a crazy math thing, but it turned into a civil rights. So what I want to do is I'm going to invite you, we have to counter the narrative, okay? The narrative is science. There is nobody in this room, maybe one, where are you, Joe? There you are. There's only one guy in this room, in my opinion, that is in the science realm that actually can understand what's going on. That's right? But on the average person, I'm going to get to you today, I'm happy to talk a little bit, but on the average person, we are not going to be able to explain science to somebody. But on their perception of their reality from what they have been propagandized, their truth is our truth. So if we try to fight science with science, we will lose. We must change the narrative, and you changing it to civil rights, your constitutional rights, the natural law, or even revealed law, right? That's the law of the church, law of the God, right? So what we have to do is begin to push back. And this is where we are focused. This is what this group is going to teach you today. I'm telling you, these people that I'm standing with, I am so proud to be with them. We have spent over tens of thousands of dollars collectively already fighting this fight. We have spent over at least 2,000 hours collectively researching, fighting, figuring out how to win, right? We are not going to give up because our hands are tied. We're not going to accept that. You're going to be removed from office. One way or another, you're going to be removed, and we're going to replace them. And we're going to replace them with people in this room who is going to take that vote of leadership and clothe the blessed magistrate and say, you know what, Governor Newsom, thank you for your advisement, but we're not going to accept it here. That's exactly what we're going to do. So our next thing, there's two things I put on this slide just help speed it up. But this is your four of things to fix, is we must assemble. Okay? Assemblies on a smaller level can do more power than us trying to collectively grow this thing to be huge. And here's what I'm talking about. You guys do not have to get involved with Blessings of Liberty in order to fight this. Now, we will invite you, obviously. However, you are better off working with folks that you already have relationships with. So, for example, if you already have a group that you have already established some kind of dynamic with, that you guys have actually been able to go out there and fix things and do things, then what we want to do is we need to join you. Okay? You have your tribe. Our job is now to get with you and collectively share our experiences and come together on one accord, saying that if we are going to fight for and secure our civil liberties, we are going to fight together. And we can do that with our research that we have, compared with what you guys already have going, we could actually come together. So these are just some groups right now. We have 3 county groups, we got some local groups down here, and these are just the ones I've been able to talk to, and we're all going to take a fight in this, in one way or another. And I want to reach out, and I'm going to invite you to decide if you want me to come to you, and I come to your group, and I will share what we have learned, and what we will do is we'll just keep making this whole page fill up with your symbols, your emblems, and that's how we take back our local government, right here. We get strategized, we get organized. And the last thing is we take massive action, correct? That's the only way we're going to change this. If you're waiting for that pendulum to fall back, don't, because you have fascism on the other end of that who wants to grab all of our power. So what we have to do is we've got this pendulum swinging, right? We all have to get on this side and shove back as hard as we can until we drive it back to the middle of us, right? This is going to take 20 years. 20 years, but it will make a difference if we become resolute. Okay? That's the key. So here is your compass that I was talking about earlier. This is how you know if your rights are being violated, right here. These are your pillars, okay, that you're going to guide yourself off of. Go ahead and click the next slide. I think we have self-governance, which basically says, hey, we are free to do as a person what I need to do. You cannot interfere with me. And as a city, as a local government, we don't need Sacramento jumping down here telling us how we have to live our lives. All right, next. We have family government. This is really important. I want to bring this to light. If you guys have children in a school system, understand your rights are being violated. You are the ultimate authority over your child's medical decisions, right? Over their education, over their health care, over their religion. You have that authority. And right now, Sacramento are telling you, you have no rights. You must take a stand. You must resist this, or else they will be right. Now, like I said, history is counting on us to step up and do what we're supposed to do to push that pendulum back. The church governance. This is huge. I had a realization the other night, and I realized, I think I was talking to Ed about it too, is that if you look at our city, we were once an all-American city, right? You guys remember that?
Yeah.
What year was that where we got the Star of the Honor? Was it?
It was in the 80s.
In the 80s?
94.
So I think it was like early.
Right.
And we ran on that, and I always felt that sense of pride when I was here. But what happened is that this is my taking of it, and you guys can agree or disagree, but what I have felt is that the church is not as active as we should be in our community. And I believe the church is the spirit that we must reignite in order to build up that bottom-up effort in order to get our cities corrected again, right? And you know what? I have, and if you guys haven't done it, I have just said whatever it takes, right? So I have actually gone out there, and we are Blessings of Liberty, we are out there, and we're working with other assemblies who have different plans, and we're like, okay, how do we make things better? So the other assemblies, they have a plan where they're going to warn our homeless. And then they had this idea to say, hey, as we warn our homeless, what if they're living down on the river? What if they'd be willing to pick up trash, in their general area? And so they started talking to them, hey, if we give you stuff here, would you mind just picking it up? And they go, well, we would love to, but we just, we don't have those capabilities. So we started having that dialogue, and now that group has actually removed over 2 tons of garbage out of your river over here. And we've been part of that. So that's taking action, and that's what it's going to take, right? And then lastly, we have the fourth realm of governance, which its only job is to secure our rights. That is its only job. And if it gets outside of the boundaries, and this is what I was talking about, boundaries of government, chaos and disorder will ensue every time somebody overreaches and gets in somebody else's function, right? So my call to you today is please figure out who your tribe is, and let's come together collectively and make a difference. Because we can't take back Porterville, we can't take back Tulare County. Thank you.
Does anybody want to make any comments? Anybody stirred to say anything?
These agencies gain power through what's called underground regulations. Underground regulations is regulations put in place through emergency power, not by legislation, not by any lawmaking body. Agencies are from the executive branch, and they're supposed to only do work underneath the governor and for the government, not for the people. But yet they take these underground regulations and apply them to all the people, and the people are so ignorant of what agencies are that they allow it to happen. And this is happening from the city level, from the county level, from the state level, and the federal level. So what you have are basically corporations that are, they're in Dun and Bradstreet. They are incorporated there. You will be able to find them on Dun and Bradstreet by their name. The sheriff, including sheriff's office, also is registered in Dun and Bradstreet. What we have is corporations providing government services. There's no real government action anymore, and it's because the people haven't demanded it.
Good point, very good point, thank you for that. And to bring back what you were just saying, is the reason why the call, the concern for tyranny is we always think that tyranny is we have an overzealous leader who then has a military coup, and then that's how they seize power, right? The one that is sneaky and that is really that we have to pay attention to is exactly what she was just saying. It's when medical, along with the public health office, ends up taking power that direction. And that's the one that we have our alarms up and we're ringing the bell on. So thank you for that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, the executive branch is overstepped completely, and there's no balance. They don't write law, and yet they're acting like they do.
Well, they write regulations, which is supposed to only help them to, over their part of the government, what they have control over. Like if it's medical, then that's what they would have it. But they have underground regulations, which means it hasn't gone through the regular rulemaking process. And that means that by the consent of the people. In order to be a rule, it has to go through the consent of the people for a year.
How many of you in this room know what Agenda 21 is? Well, 2030 is mostly business, isn't it? It's not taking your child away from you at birth and that type of thing. That's all in 21. You will not have any private property. You will not have a private car.
Elderly are killed.
Yes. And I just made a list of it, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it tells about all of the things that are going on now, things that you never even suspected had anything to do with a final plan that's supposed to be finished by 2050. And so these corporations now, how many of you know that they're buying up private property and not selling it but renting it? I wondered myself how they were going to get the property away from us. And they're doing this quite nicely. And the high-speed rail, there is a map of, Agenda 21 map, of what their plans for the San Joaquin Valley were. That is 6 living centers, and then you'll be taken off your property and put in these living centers that are 72 stories tall. And if you're single, we'll have a 200 square foot room. And if you're married, then you get what, 260, is it 250? Or, well, anyway, you won't need any larger because you won't be having children. I mean, you'll be having children, but they're going to take them. And they'll decide who is going to have children or not. But this is all, the high-speed rail is one of the things on the map, on the Agenda 21 plan. That's what this has been all about all along. And you see the power, how it's gone through against the people's will.
And the fires.
And the fires. And anyway, if you don't have Agenda 21, please get it and get the Agenda 2030 too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what Annabelle was talking about is that, okay, let's say they do have a plan, right? Agenda 21, they were not expecting Agenda 2022. You know what 2022 is? That's right, it's us. We're going to fix it. All right, so next, real quick on this subject. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of wrap up our macro segment. And you don't want that? Okay.
The only way we're gonna do it is by coming together.
Only way. I agree. Very well could be. I don't know, but thank you for that. Thank you. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to go ahead and I want you guys to think, okay, we just talked about the macro sense, how human behavior swings from one side to the other, and it's been biblical. It goes back 3,000 years. This is just the pattern that we're on, but it's up to us to drive it the other direction. So what we want to do now is actually shine a light on, wait, the next slide. Shine a light on our local government because it's important that we know what's going on in our backyard. And I'm going to go ahead and have Greg speak about that. He was the one who was actually at the town hall, or the city hall.
No. You guys can hear me, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was the one that was at the last city council meeting, and I was the one that recorded Ray Dean being arrested unlawfully, right?
That's right.
I'm not as talented as Josh, so I got to go speech format. Just letting you guys know. Thomas Jefferson once said, "The issue today is the same as it's been throughout all history. Whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite." My name is Greg Meister. I'm a local citizen, a true blue-collar worker that is fed up. Our federal, state, and local governments are raging out of control and are lawless. It is time we teach them we, the people, are in charge.
That's right.
I have to tell a story about January 18th, city council meeting. Unmasked, I gave a speech. Rightfully so, I let the city council and mayor have it. I shamed them for stealing the Christmas lights from the children of Porterville in order to run vaccination booths. I shamed them for closing small businesses. I shame them for continuing their emergency powers. I call on them to make our city a sanctuary city against all mandates, to give the power back to the people, to remove mandates against all businesses, police, fire, and city employees. You would think that's when the mayor would try and stop me. No, the mayor stops me mid-speech because I spoke about pre-treatment therapeutics like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. He claims I'm not qualified to speak about medicine when he sits on a COVID-19 ad hoc committee that believes they're qualified to give experimental shots to 12-year-old kids and then pay them our tax dollars to do it. After this night is over, I go home and get on YouTube. I researched the city council meeting. I wanted to see what happened to build up a 75-year-old raiding, getting arrested for not wearing a mask correctly. I come across Brock Neely sitting behind me when I was giving my speech. He gives the mayor's signs to cut me off when I start speaking about therapeutics. He goes, time out, cutthroat, to waving his hands back and forth. Once he gets the mayor's attention, down comes the gavel. How is this unelected person controlling our mayor and city council? Why is this person so concerned about censoring proven treatments for COVID-19? How does he have the power to shut down another citizen? Before I go into the next section of this story, I want to say we love and respect our police. They have the hardest job in our society. They perform assignments and tasks that I simply can't imagine every day. We can only say we thank and back our local police department for the hard work and dedication to our city. The city council calls a session for an hour. I leave and come back unmasked. Sitting waiting for the council to come back, I get a tap on my shoulder. Lieutenant Bruce Sokoloff. He tells me I need to wear a mask. I ask why. I was in here earlier without a mask. He said he didn't want to get into it, put a mask on. I said, can you show me the law that says I have to wear a mask? Sokoloff replies, my boss told me to. If you don't put a mask on, you will have to leave. If you don't leave, I will arrest you. Not 10 minutes later, I'm recording this senior officer arresting a 75-year-old woman. Ray Dean Strong, what happened to you that night was a disgrace. It was lawless, and your God-given rights were violated. You deserve a public apology from that officer and that chief. Ray Dean, you're a patriot, and I thank you for taking that stand. People, we now have masked police in Porterville. We have a city council drunk with emergency powers. Our schools are treating our kids as if they're mere creatures of the state, as if parental rights do not exist. If you want to see the beginning of tyranny, look no further than our local schools and local government. Local action means national impact. Only you can save our community. Only you, the people, can save our country. Only you, the people, can stop these unconstitutional mandates. It is the people who are in charge. Now it's time to peacefully fight back. These school board members, city council, and politicians serve us, the Republic. We need courageous Americans like Martin Luther King, who had a dream. Men like George Washington, who stood strong against the largest military in the world. Americans like Cesar Chavez, who fought for civil rights right here in this valley. It is our duty as Americans to fight for our freedom. We owe this to our ancestors, and we owe this to our children. You are not born with courage. It is a decision. Back a couple years ago, I worked on a hotshot crew called Fulton Hotshots. It is where I found courage. It is where I learned how to fight a raging fire. We would hike to the fire's edge, establish an anchor point. Using chainsaws and hand tools, we began flanking, assisted by air attack. We'd work all days, sometimes having to retreat, but always stayed persistent until the raging fire was contained. Like I said in the beginning of this speech, our government is raging out of control. Our meeting today is your anchor point. Our hand tools are notices and affidavits. Our chainsaws are grand juries. Our air attack is the Constitution. The simple fact is, we will never begin flanking unless you decide to hike to the fire's edge. Get up, find a way to peacefully fight back. Go to school board meetings, even if your child is not in the system. Go to city council meetings, even if you live outside the city. Become a precinct member. Find a way to get in the fight, and together we will take back our God-given rights. I will be running for District 2 City Council. As a side note, I have a letter from James McMurtry that he wrote. It is a letter I served to my son and daughter's principal and school board. My daughter and son do not wear a mask. If you and your child are ready to take a stand, come find me. I have copies. God bless you. God bless our great nation. And remember, courage is a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Woo. So, interesting story about Greg. First time I met Greg, and I never talked to him. We first got together, we did an event out at Knuckles Ranch, right? And I had this guy sitting in the front row, and I was talking, he just looked angry. And I was like, huh. And I didn't know who he was, but he was taking it all in what we were talking about taking the fight back to him. And then the next school board meeting I went to, there was this guy, and I remembered him because he had a nice, good beard. I can't grow a beard like that. And so anyhow, he goes into the school board meeting, and he just lets them have it. I go, I like that. So and when we walked out, I told my dad, hey, go get his name and number. I want to make sure I talk to that guy. And so then I called Greg like a couple days later or whatever. I said, hey, we could sure use a voice like yours, and I want to thank you for everything you're doing. You're doing a fantastic job. And what that pastor was saying earlier, he was saying, you got to be resolute. Greg is resolute. He will take any fight on in front of him, and I appreciate that. So going on to our next topic, our next speaker today, this has been a tough one. This has been a hard 30 days, roughly. I got a chance to go up with Jimmy Leroy to the Sacramento sit-out, I guess it was, that we were doing on January 3rd. And so it was really classy the way that we rolled up there. Jimmy rented out 2 classic charter buses. Everybody met in the different groups, and we rolled up there in style. And my daughter still talks about that today. You know? And so I got a really disturbing message or concerning message. I got a text from Jimmy shortly after we got back from that trip, and he goes, hey, bro, he goes, I was around you, and I just tested positive. So, okay, well, that's not good. But what I liked about Jimmy, he goes, could be common cold. We don't know what it is, right? And so Jimmy is somebody, and I want to make sure if you guys don't know who he is. He has put together, him and Marilyn put together Unmasked Tulare County. They were fighting the fight before I got involved. And actually it was Don who introduced me to them. And what was really interesting was Jimmy, he's always calm, cool, has kind of control of the situation, right? And so without Jimmy in the fight the last 30 days, it's been a little hairy. I was like, man, Jimmy needs to come back. You know, I'm missing Jimmy. So what was cool is that we want to get Jimmy reintroduced into the public speaking again. We hope his lungs are up for it today. But what we're going to do is he's been talking to a lot of people around the county. And he talks to city council members in other spots, not just Porterville here. So I want to know what everybody else is saying outside of Porterville, other than just the Porterville news. So with further ado, Jimmy Malloy.
Thank you, Josh. How are you guys doing? Good? All right, cool. I want to introduce real quick my wife, Marilyn. We do these events, and a lot of times I am the mouthpiece of this, but Marilyn's the heart behind this. So Marilyn, will you stand up real quick? Marilyn started Unmasked Tulare County back in June, just knowing that, you know, stuff is not right. And she would come to me all the time and she'd say, you know what, things don't add up here. And I mean, long before June, she would say, things are not adding up here. This is not right. We need to do something about this. And I'd just be like, okay, you know, do what you feel like you need to do. And so one day she came back and she says, you know, I started this Facebook group because I was mad. I was meeting these other people at Target, and they're mad too, and we need to do something about this. She's like, will you get on board and help me? And I said, well, I will on one condition. I said, if this is going to be a group of complainers, it's going to be a group where people just go and complain and they whine and they bicker and they whatever. I want nothing to do with it. That's not what I'm about. If we're going to be a group of people who are taking action, we're going to be a group of people who are committed to making a difference and actually doing something about it, then yes, I'm on board. And that's what we endeavor to do with Unmasked Tulare County. That's what Blessings of Liberty and every other group that's represented here is involved with. So anyway, nice to meet you if I haven't met you already. How many of you are from Porterville? Raise your hand. Awesome. Awesome. How many are not from Porterville? Raise your hand.
Thank you, everybody.
So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today, was that Porterville is not like Vegas in the sense that what happens here stays here, right? It really doesn't stay in Vegas either, but you know. What happens in Porterville doesn't just stay in Porterville. Tulare County is an amazing county in the sense that we have several cities and little communities and stuff that are tight-knit, that are knit together. We have a way of doing things. Since we've started even talking to city councils and school boards and all of these things, we've told them, look, the way of life, the way we do things in Tulare County is not the same as how they do things in Sacramento. It's not the same as how they do things in Los Angeles or San Francisco. Our way of life, our way of doing things, we the people, the way that we do life is different here. We're tied together. We're different than they are. And what happens in Porterville, and Greg was just up here, and I'm glad, Josh probably did this intentionally, but I'm glad to be able to follow him because what happened in Porterville to Radine and Greg and all that went crazy throughout the county. I don't know if you guys are aware of that or not, but it did, even beyond the county. Like, that thing blew up. I saw Greg's video that he posted upside down. How many of you guys saw the upside down version of that? I was like, man, one of those things, that's one of those things that just annoys me.
That's the first time I've ever done it.
What's that?
I said it's the first time I've ever done it.
You mean you don't just follow people around and record them? Okay, that's good. So I look at it and it's upside down, and I was just like, you know, trying to watch this thing and get a feel for what's going on. So I flipped it up right side up, and Marilyn was getting texts and stuff from people. Hey, can you send me this video? Send me this video. And it's a 10-minute long video. How many of you guys know it's hard to send 10-minute long videos like through a text, right? You can't do that. So you got to come up with another way. And I said, well, we do have this YouTube channel for Unmasked Tulare County. So I'm just going to like throw it on there. And, you know, if you want to send it to people, you can send it to people. Now, our Unmasked channel, you know, we do all right. You know, most of our videos have 100, 200 views, something like that. But we post that thing, and it was like an hour later, I'm doing breathing treatments because I'm trying to recover from COVID and all this. And after like 20 minutes, I go and I look at it, and it's got like 500 views or something. I'm like, oh, man, people are going crazy on this thing. I wake up the next morning, and I look, and it's got like 1,200 views, 1,500 views. It gets 24 hours in. It's got 5,700 views. And I'm like, wow, and I don't care about, the number of views or anything like that, but what it tells me is that a lot of people are paying attention, a lot of people are watching. And what it tells me is it's not just Porterville, because we are hearing from Visalia, we're hearing from Tulare, we're hearing from Exeter. People are just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What happened? This is not right. What happened? And it's going all over the place. It went to, it went national at one point. What was the guy's name? Stu Peters. If any of you know who Stu Peters is. There was an article featured on his website about this issue that happened. So, I mean, that's a national audience, which is amazing. But I want you to know that what happens in Porterville doesn't stay in Porterville. Now, I got a call from one of our city council members. We live in Tulare. And I got a call from one of our city council members, and he was just like, hey, I wanted to just touch base with you about what happened in Porterville. And I was like, okay. And he says, there's a lot of conversation that's going on, all around everywhere. Like, obviously in their city council, they're having conversations about that. And he's saying it's out there everywhere. Like, people are having these discussions. And I was like, wow, that's kind of nuts. But it helped me to realize that what happens in Porterville doesn't stay in Porterville. What happens in Tulare doesn't stay in Tulare. What happens in Visalia doesn't stay in Visalia. But we're all interconnected. And in this county, what happens in one place impacts another, right? We talked to superintendents. I actually just got off the phone as we came here with a good friend of ours who is a superintendent. I'm not going to say where from. That way they can maintain some, anyway. But I was talking to the superintendent just about a variety of different things. And they're telling me, look, you guys, like Unmasked Tulare County, the other groups that are going to school board meetings, she was telling me that they go to these meetings that are just all the school board superintendents, excuse me, not school board, but superintendents all around the area. And they meet and they talk about current events, issues, things to worry about, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, you guys are on the agenda like all the time. You guys are on the radar, and that's not just for that district. That's for the entire area. When they meet and they talk to, and their attorneys come out and they tell them, hey, this is going on, that's going on, all the other things. And they say, look, you guys are on the radar. Blessings of Liberty in Porterville, you guys are doing a great job with getting in there. But I want you to know that what happens in each of our towns don't just stay in our towns, because these people talk to each other. Now the makeup of all of our school boards, the makeup of all of our city councils is different, right? They're all different people. Some of them are great folks. Some of them maybe not so great folks. Some of them are on our side with this. Some of them are not. Every district is different. And so the battle in every single district is going to be a little bit different from each other. But they are all getting the same advice from the same attorneys. You guys know, like for school boards, for example, the same attorney group advises all of them. In the area. It's not like each one has their own set of attorneys. It's like the same group that's talking to them about different things. And this superintendent that I was just talking to, she's saying, look, all of these school boards are getting bad advice from the people that they're talking to. The priority of the attorneys that they're talking to is to try to keep the district away from lawsuits. And they're going to give them the advice that they believe will keep them away from those big lawsuits, and that's not in line with what we're talking about. The insurance folks that they talk to are going to give them advice that is going to allow them to stay away from a lot of the big insurance claims. That's not in line with what we're about. A lot of times, the right thing never comes into play when you're talking to attorneys, when you're talking to insurance people. It's just the most defensible thing. That's all it is. And so a lot of the people who are out there on our school boards, on our city councils, the people that you guys are talking to on a regular basis, hopefully, and they're telling you, what, I agree with you, but our hands are tied. These are not terrible, evil, people. These are our community members, the folks that we've grown up with, the folks that we know, but they're getting bad advice. And the people that they rely on to tell them what to do, to give them the advice that they need, the little conventions they go to when you're being a school board, they're getting the advice from these folks who are not necessarily concerned with doing the right thing, but doing the most defensible thing.
Isn't that just using the excuse, they told me to do it?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it
Whether
is.
or not they're ignorant to morals or not, we need to remove them regardless.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that we need to understand where they're coming from. And we need to understand that they are getting bad advice. Do we need to leave them in that place? No, we don't. I told our school board a few weeks ago, look, if you are not up for the moment, that's fine. But if you're not up for the moment, we'll accept your resignation with no hard feelings. We need to put somebody in that in that place who is up for this moment and ready to stand the way they need to. I'm not saying we should leave them there. I'm saying that when we talk, really what I was saying was that as a community in Tulare County, these folks are all getting the same advice from the same people. So while each board may be different and made up a little bit different, they are getting the same advice and they're getting the same information from the same people. And the thing that I wanted to end with was this. There are people out there on the opposite side of things who are being very vocal. You don't see them at the school board meetings because they're sitting at home in their living room with 4 masks on. But there are a number of people who are sending emails, making phone calls, doing all these things. That was actually confirmed to me today with the superintendent that I was talking to. She said, they were in this meeting with all the superintendents and they were talking about this. Like Visalia has a huge group of people who are bombarding them constantly about the masks, about the vaccines, about all this kind of stuff. Tulare has a large group of people. She wasn't sure about Porterville. She wasn't sure about Exeter. But she said there are large groups. You don't see them, A, because they're scared to go out in public. B, because they're winning. They don't need to go out there and be vocal. And so what I want to encourage you with is, we talk about this deal that happened in Porterville last week. And, I was seeing all sorts of comments and hearing different people about, Radine being my hero. Radine, you're my hero. Which I love, and I love Radine. But I want to tell you that if Radine is your hero because she got arrested, you might need to reevaluate your priorities.
Yeah.
Radine is fantastic because she's been going to these city council meetings for a long time. She's been there consistently. She's been going to school board meetings. She's been in the fight longer than probably most of us have in this room. And that's what we need. Because listen, there is another side out there. And I wasn't sure about this. And I've questioned people because I've been told by superintendents and school boards, look, there's people who are emailing me and saying the other things. And I'm like, where are they? I've never seen one, when we've gone to school board meetings and all that. And she'd say, they're just one second. She'd say, they are out there. There are quite a few of them. And what I would want to encourage you guys with is that we need to be doing the same. We need to not take our foot off the gas pedal. It's great to come out on a Sunday afternoon to a town hall meeting, but we have to make our voices heard. We have to send that email. We have to make that phone call. We have to show up at the school board. Because if that's happening on the other side of things and we think that we're just going to leave it to the 10 people who've been consistent about going to whatever, I could ask, how many people have consistently shown up at school board meetings? I won't ask, but we know the answer. We need to be better as a group about doing the things, not just about getting on and being keyboard warriors, but about doing the things that we need to do to make a difference. And so I would encourage everybody, in this room, you guys showed up on a Sunday afternoon. That's fantastic. This is doing the things. But we need to step up and we need to get out there. And we need to put the pressure, apply the pressure. Tell them, like we said earlier, this stuff that's happening is not okay. And I would encourage you to tell them, be upfront with them. Look, this is the moment where you guys need to stand up and you need to do what's right. And you need to, even though they told you so, even though your hands are tied, even though all of these things are, maybe true, you need to step up and do the right thing, not just the most defensible thing. And if you're not willing to do that, you need to step down, or we will help you step down in any way that's available to us. And so that's not, being rude. That's not, being wrong. That's not, if it hurts their feelings, it hurts their feelings. That's okay. But we need to tell them, and we need to be very upfront, and then we need to follow through. That if you're not up for the challenge, we would ask you to step down. And if you won't, then we will assist you in that. So anyway, I applaud Greg for stepping up and saying, I see a problem. I see an issue here. I'm going to go to the board meetings. I'm going to speak out and tell them what they are doing is wrong. I'm going to tell them that they need to make a correction, and they haven't. And so, you know what? I'm going to step up and I'm going to run against whoever that person is in my district. We need folks who will do that. We need folks who will say, you know what? It's more than just complaining. It's more than being upset. It's about saying, you know what? I could do that, and I'm going to. So I would challenge every one of you, and I issue this challenge all the time on our Facebook Lives, is that you may not think that it's you. You may look at yourself and say, you know what, I couldn't do that job. I couldn't be a school board member or a city councilman. I'm not a rocket scientist. Guess what? We've been going to this stuff. None of them are rocket scientists either. None of them are like overly qualified to sit in the position that they're sitting in. So if you're sitting there and you're just like, man, I don't know if I have the qualifications. You do. You're sitting here, you're breathing, you're a patriot, you believe that the government should be run by people, you are qualified. The question is, will you have the courage to step up and do it? And so I would encourage you the same way Greg did. Find that courage within you. My wife has been saying this for a while, and it's something that sticks with me. She said, you know, Jimmy, I'm scared to go do this stuff. It's not my wheelhouse. This is not, you know, what I'm comfortable with. When we go to school boards and it's time to step up there and speak, I'm scared. I don't like to do it. She says, but I do it anyway. She said, I'm scared to do this stuff, but I do it anyway. And that's what courage is. It's when you're scared to do it, but you do it anyway. And some of you are in this room right now, in this moment right now, and the reason why you may not want to step up and do these things is because you're scared, and that's okay. I'm not going to shame you for being afraid. But when you're scared, do it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Oh my gosh, it's so good to have Jimmy back, right? Yeah. We beat it. We did it. So we have one more speaker, then we'll go into the town hall questioning, okay? So our next speaker is somebody that I also met at that first event that we had. It was real brief in passing. And then later I go, man, I need to go talk to this guy. And so what I was excited about is I actually asked this gentleman if he would be able to, or be willing to take on the presidency role, and we were going to formalize and actually bring Blessings of Liberty as a true nonprofit, and he agreed. And so we are very blessed. So we have, our next speaker is going to be Mr. Bruce White. Him and his wife, Teresa, thank you for everything you guys are doing. They're true patriots of this town. And one thing I want you guys to make it known of is that they are not just about talk. These guys are all about action. And everything that we're starting to hear about is action, action, action. Action is what's going to make the difference, right? So keep it up. Let's see, what are we going to talk about, Bruce? Yes, you got your hand full, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so we have some realizations going on.
I'm kind of like Greg. I'm just going to read my speech here a little bit. I don't need the mic. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
No?
No.
All right.
Microphone.
Use the microphone. I can try that. Testing. Okay. Hello, fellow patriots.
Hello.
Those of you whom I have not met, my name is Bruce White. I'm a lifelong resident of Porterville in Tulare County. I'm a business owner, a family man, a freedom-loving, law-abiding citizen. And I understand that according to the FBI, this now qualifies me as a domestic terrorist. What an honor. What an honor to be in the company of great other domestic terrorists. Like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, the list goes on. I kind of feel, I didn't get to know what the other people were going to speak about that much, so some of these guys have been reading my email about action. But I'm going to try and draw attention to the local aspect of this through a story about my realization and how important it is, I think, we stay local with our commitment to our action. So growing up in the Valley, freedom was just a way of life. We learned about it in our schools, they preached it in our church, and liberty seemed to just flow across the fruited plains. Freedom and the belief in America as the bastion of liberty was never even a question. I was too young to understand what was happening to Rosa Parks. Sure, I'd see newspaper photos of cops beating protesters, but these were events so remote and so foreign to my mostly carefree life in the San Joaquin Valley that I simply never knew I should even be concerned. That could never happen here was a common theme in my head. I would see news of the civil rights protesters being drug off by the National Guard or police, and I just didn't get it. And so I went on about my life and took all my freedoms for granted. Sure, every now and then I'd see a story on the TV about injustice and tyranny right here in my own government, and I'd get upset about it. 5-10 minutes, you know. I'd whine about it to some friends that came over outside by my barbecue, and then we'd go right back on living life, believing that it simply could not happen here, couldn't happen to me. And then COVID hit, and suddenly I was behind enemy lines. My governor had just declared that all those constitutional freedoms that I lauded over were null and void. The year 2020 swept into my life and upended everything I believed about my government, my police, my doctors, and sadly, even some of my family and friends. I watched stunned as police departments stood by and let cities burn. I could not leave my house. I couldn't go fishing, not even by myself, not even to a lake that only has 4 people on it during peak season. It was just crazy to me. I was shell-shocked, I was depressed, but I was still clinging to my apathy. Still whining and complaining to the same old friends, just not at the barbecue this time. Now we did it over an app on my phone. And I get upset for 5 or 10 minutes and then go on about my life. I was forced to turn my living room into a classroom as schools locked out and locked down. I had people scream at me that I needed to wear a mask as they stood there with their ridiculous bandana pulled over their face, preaching to me about some mandate. Still, my apathy and my imprinted belief, this won't happen here, not in Porterville, not in Tulare County, persisted. And so recently when I saw the national news story of the New York Police Department using armed officers to forcibly escort and detain a 9-year-old child for not having our proof of vaccination card, again I thought to myself, well, that's just terrible. That's awful. Glad I don't live in New York. That could not happen here. Our local police chief would never sick his officers on someone for simply not having a vaccine card or wearing a mask. That's just New York crazy stuff. And then, only a few days later, right here in my beloved little town, my fantasy world of pretend freedoms was obliterated. Right here at our own city council meeting, the chief of police of Porterville went full frontal NYPD. His officers handcuffed and arrested a grandma for having her nose exposed. Great-grandmother. I watched both videos of the incident. My wife even drove down there while it was happening. I was sickened by it. As a businessman, it's just in my nature to do a quick inventory of taxpayer costs when such a response occurs. So I just did a quick inventory. So there were 4 police cruisers. There was 8 officers, 8 .40 caliber semi-automatic pistols, 8 tasers, 8 batons and billy clubs, and 4 semi-automatic shotguns. 4 Granny's nose. I can't get that kind of response at my business if I call the Porterville Police Department and say, hey, they're coming over the fence. You know what they'll tell me? They say, hey, you got insurance. We'll send a community service officer out tomorrow to take a report. Right? It's insane. I was livid, but still, I felt that I should wait and let the chief make a statement before I chimed in on social media. As a leader of 4 companies, I assumed that the chief could show his leadership skills and he would calm the public furor. I was wrong. Jake actually didn't show any leadership at all, in my opinion. In fact, he basically doubled down on the incident by proclaiming it was not only justified, but implying that he would do it again as well. For all my life, I have been pro-police. I have never been a defund the police guy. But after this display of police overreach by the Porterville Police Department, I've changed my mind. I can assure you that we could reduce the budget by at least the cost of 8 officers and all their accoutrements with no effect on my security. The police chief claims in his press release that he is bound by duty to uphold the laws and even mandates. You know the funny thing about that, Jake? That's exactly what the police said when they dragged Rosa Parks out of the bus and when they arrested and beat members of the Night Riders. They dragged them off the bus, beat them, and arrested them for sitting in the wrong seat. And their justification was, hey, I'm just doing my job. I'm just upholding the mandate. And so that brings me to my eye-opening realization of what this is. This is our Rosa Parks moment. We must stand up and confront this abuse. The prioritization of taxpayer assets for law enforcement is a primary function of the police chief. And if this is how our chief believes he should allocate his forces, when we have crime on the rise everywhere, both in our city and in our county, then it is my opinion we have the wrong police chief.
Amen.
If you watched the city council meeting that night, it appears that this entire event may have been at the behest of the mayor. I hope this is not true, but it is certainly an obvious question when you review the evidence. We cannot allow our police force to become the mayor's personal Gestapo. I encourage everyone to watch both videos and share them far and wide. I warn you now, we are only a breath away from you reading headlines that the Porterville Police Department has arrested a teenage high school student at Wenatchee for letting her nose show. It's not beyond our mayor to try to pass local ordinance to further strip away your rights and then use his personal Gestapo to enforce these rules. He is a complete medical tyranny supporter. If you don't believe me, go listen to him. Go try and speak an alternative point of view and watch how fast he comes undone. The threat to our liberties is real, and it's here, and it's right in our face. This is a major call to action. They are teaching CRT right now at our local schools. It's not something that's happening in New York. It's happening right here. Go to Wenatchee and check it out. They call it by a different name in hopes you won't catch on. They call it SEL, Social and Emotional Learning. Go to a school board meeting and listen. You'll be shocked. The last school board meeting that I went to, the principal of Westfield bragged about her grant for SEL programs and how she intended to implement interventional learning. Seriously, this is the gate school. This is where we send our most gifted and intelligent and advanced kids. They do not need an intervention. They need her to get out of the way. They don't need to be told that they have social and emotional problems by teachers who are not even qualified to assess psychological issues. They don't need to be asked, how did your race affect your life? Or told that they are privileged and should feel shame about it. This is happening right now in our schools, right here. In a very deceitful way, teaching children to hate others based on the color of their skin or to divide them with racist propaganda cannot be allowed to continue. It would honestly be better if we shut the schools down than to let this go on.
Yes, I agree.
This is our movement. This is where we determine the kind of nation that we will leave for our children and our grandchildren. Where we stand up, where we fight for the freedoms that we've taken for granted all our lives, where we answer the call. This is literally history in the making. You're living it right now. This is the civil rights movement and the civil rights cause of our time. They are going to write about this for decades to come. And so I had to ask myself, what will I tell my grandchildren when they ask me, hey, Grandpa, where were you during the COVID civil rights movement? Will I be like one of those people in Mississippi during that civil rights movement that just stood there and did nothing while local governments justified using their police forces to arrest and beat people for sitting in the wrong seat on a bus? Or will I tell a different story of how I stood up to tyranny, how I fought and protected the freedoms of my country and my posterity? And if so, then what can I do? Well, I'm going to give you a list of things we can all do immediately to change the course of our local governments. And I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional about this. It's really impactful to me. I have grandchildren right here. And I have to look myself in the mirror and admit that my own apathy is part of the problem.
Me too.
Yeah.
So number one, suit up and show up. That's number one. Go to a school board meeting even if you don't want to speak. Go and support others. Go and learn. Go and listen. Be aware. There are so many ways to get help and get involved. Number two, teach two to teach two. I challenge everyone in the room to invite two friends. Find two friends and invite them into one of the groups. And then teach those two friends to get two friends and invite them in the group, where they can learn more about how we can interact with our local government, more ways we can resist this movement. Teach two to teach two. And then number three is local, local, local. This battle will not be won in Washington, D.C. It'll be won right here on the front lines in your local government and in your school boards. The threat to our liberty is enacted locally. It is our local school boards, local police chiefs, and city councils and county supervisors that ultimately enforce all these mandates, threaten business licenses, and arrest grandma's nose. So our fight is here at the local level. Others here today will speak and have spoke about specific actions we are pursuing to stop the mandates and restore freedom of choice. I'll simply give you a broad outline. We need to resuscitate our freedoms and our local control. We need CPR. C, civil and legal action. P, political action. And R, resistance. Number one, civil and legal. This is a combination of civic and administrative actions like notices and affidavits and demands, along with lawsuits. Others here today will speak to you about the civil actions. I will tell you that lawsuits have been filed and more are coming. I can't speak about pending litigation. I can just tell you that I have a true belief that those that have been blessed are obligated to be a blessing to others. And so I've personally filed lawsuits. And my wife and I, through our charity, have sponsored other lawsuits and are helping others with their legal fees. So lawsuits are coming. Lawsuits are a powerful tool, but they are not our only tool in the strategy. So then there's political issues. It is absolutely critical that we elect new school board members, city council members, and county supervisors. Blessings and Liberty and the other groups have joined in recruiting candidates and organizing to begin campaign committees and to assist these brave civil servants to take back our local government, and we need your help. This won't be won by leaving the current occupants of many of these positions in place. It simply won't be. If Jimmy didn't scare you enough by telling you that there's groups of people out there sending them emails and letters that are contrary to what you believe, I can tell you they're sitting up there right now, and they have put their money and their bureaucracies ahead of your children and ahead of you, and that's what they're going to continue to do if they're left in office.
We're at war.
I could go on and on about how we've lost control of our elected officials because we've implemented this institutional bureaucracies that permeate all our local governments and make decisions based on getting money and getting more money, and bureaucracies only exist to make bureaucracies bigger. I could go on and on about why these people stand up there and say, "Whoa, my hands are tied. We're really just a state agency." I'm not kidding you. Dr. Nelson at PUSD actually said that out loud. I sat there and went, "Hey, that's an inside thought, isn't it?" No, he said it out loud. We're a state agency. I went, "Well, then what do we need you for? What do we even need the school board for? We'll just deal with Sacramento directly. To heck with it. Save a lot of money." But that's how they think. And I was shocked. It's been a huge awakening to me. My apathy has been a big problem. But that ends. That ends now. And the last point I'll make, and it's been made before, is resist. Peaceful civil disobedience is the cornerstone of civil rights. If no one ever resisted, we would have no rights. Right?
Yep.
So stand up. Stop complying. Take a stand.
Amen.
Be fearless. Live by faith, not by fear. God bless you.
God bless you.
Hey, what a blessing, right? We have him leading the charge now here in Porterville. So what do we want to do right now with time? I know we're up against it already. Do you guys, how do you guys feel? You got one more speaker. You guys want to just roll right into it, or you guys want to do some public comments real quick?
Yeah. Roll through.
Let's roll through it, right? All right, let's do this. So our next speaker, this gentleman, he came down from the mountain. It sounds weird, but that's exactly what happened, right? So we were up in Exeter, and I was introduced to, or we were doing a town hall at the Exeter event, and this gentleman stood up and he was talking, and he was saying, hey, we are going to stand, we got to fight, and I thought, interesting. And I had to bail out on Jimmy while he was talking, and I said, I was moved to go talk to him. I'm not going to let him out of my sight. So I ran over there, I got his card. 2 days later, we met at an A&W. We sat down for an hour and 45 minutes, and I didn't know this, but I was being interviewed. I thought I was talking to him, but yeah, I was being interviewed. So anyhow, without further ado, James has put countless hours in, and what he has a special aptitude for is he understands how the administrative process works from we, the people. So please put your hands together for James.
I did come down from the mountain, and I brought the commandments with me. And just a real quick introduction. If I would ever introduce myself in any way, I am a Christian. I'm saved by the blood of Christ. Yeah. Who was buried and rose again, and is returning.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, though, we got to take care of our country and our people so that we can reach people for Christ. I raised my hand a while ago because I lacked apathy, and that's why we kind of got here, like Bruce said. We got busy doing our own thing and taking care of our own families. Nothing wrong with that. We need to enjoy that in life. But we let somebody else do it for us. Yeah. My dad used to have a saying, as long as I'm paying for it, you're going to do it my way. The government works the same way. Yes. Except we're paying for it. So I went through this whole issue just like the rest of you with this whole 2 years of COVID, but this started for me 30 years ago when I heard a man by the name of President George Bush on the podium talk about this new world order. It hit me like a brick between the eyes, and I realized, here we go. God said we're going to go down this way. It's going to happen. I don't know when, what day, or any of that, but it's going to happen. But I believe with all that is in me, that it doesn't have to be today. They can start down this road, but we, the people, can repent and repair and replace our government with who needs to be there. Yeah. We do have the power. And one of the things that I realized is and I'm grateful for now, and while I was vetting Josh during that meeting, my dad brought me up. My dad had a 6th grade education. You know the most important thing he learned to do? Read. And my dad was hooked on case studies and law and Supreme Court rulings and Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Magna Carta. And so I had to grow up in a house listening to this man quote and run on and ramble all this stuff off. And then all of a sudden I'm thanking Jesus now because he was providing for us today with all that teaching that came from my dad. If I asked you today, in this situation that we went into, what Title 18 USC 242 was all about, could anybody here tell me? Right. It has to do with what we're going through today. Mandates are what we call under the color of law. And see, when it's under the color of law, it is unconstitutional. It also has to do with deprivation of the rights of every and each individual in America. By the way, this crisis is worldwide. But the only way the world's going to get out of this crisis is if we take care of ourselves here locally. Yeah. Laws like that started popping up, and I decided to go to a school board meeting because my wife and I were sitting in the living room and looking at the reports and listening to all this stuff, and my wife in her broken spirit said to me, somebody has got to do something. And I'm telling you, within the spirit of me, God said, go. And I said, I'll go. But go with me. Yeah. And you know what I've learned over life is that wherever I go, God's already there. Right. So I put together all these laws and these Title 18s, and I'm going to make a speech to the board, and I'm going to give it to them, the Constitution, how under the common law they're in violation of the Constitution. Those are criminal laws, actually. Title 18, 242, at the very end of it, when you deprive people of their constitutional rights, you have just kidnapped them. It is a finable, an imprisonment, and it's a real criminal code. And there's many more of them, and I'm not going to rattle them all off to you today, even because you're not going to remember them. The point of the matter is that we have to educate ourselves.
Yes.
You see, if you don't know what your rights are, you don't have any. That's one rule. Another principle and rule is if you do not exercise the rights that you have, you forfeit them. And once you forfeit rights, you don't get them back without a fight. The tyranny that we're experiencing right now is because they've been chipping away and chipping away and chipping away at our rights. And so many of us in our schools in the past 30 years have not even learned what those rights are. Could I ask you today about the doctrine of parental rights from the United States Supreme Court? Could you tell me what that is?
I read it this morning.
God bless you, because you're learning, you're researching, and that's what we have to do. We have to educate, equip, inform, and then engage. We have to re-educate ourselves to our rights. That doctrine is long-lived, and it has been penned in a letter that Greg was talking about that you can take to your schools and school districts. It declares your rights as a parent to raise your children. That has to do with education, nurturing, protection, and everything else. That you as a parent, those children of yours are known in the term legally as your liberty interest. And you have all right to say what your children do. They've got this new vaccine thing saying, and they're using an old law that was used for venereal disease to protect children that were molested. And when they're 12 years old, they can have medical treatments and vaccines without the parents' rights. Now that's going into effect next year. No, it's not. Because I am the parent. You are the parent. You are the steward of that child. And it is your role, God-given role and duty, to protect that child and to make decisions for that child. By the way, I don't know about you, but where I grew up, I just told you, my dad said, as long as I'm paying for it, it's going to be done my way. When my 12-year-old gets a job and pays taxes and votes, they can do whatever they want. But they don't. We do, on their behalf. So let me give you a little bit of a history, and then I'm going to try to bring you into the plan that has been implemented. I began in October. I'm a Johnny-come-lately. I mean, I almost waited until it was too late. But I have prayerfully and diligently tried to educate myself for two purposes. And this is what we stand about at TCCF. Returning people back to God and returning the government to the people. And the reason why that is because I believe that our country has lost its moral standard. We've heard some of that talked about this morning. Right? So, in a way of history, many years ago, some fine young men were sending off these notices to a tyrannical leader. And for many years, they continued to send these notices off, notice after notice after notice. And some of the notices they were retaliated against because this tyrannical leader just liked to play with people and thought he was all that. And sometimes he just ignored them. Until one day, when these young Bible-believing men came together and they wrote an affidavit. Today we know that affidavit as the Declaration of Independence. And in that document, they made it very clear that we are all endowed by our Creator unalienable rights. You see, a right is not something that can be given or taken away. It just is. It's not something that can be awarded by the government, because it's not theirs to give. It is given to us, endowed by God Almighty. That ought to encourage you here today. That ought to encourage you so much and empower you to know that you have something that no one can take away from you. So how does the enemy combat that? Well, they try to confuse you. They try to divide you. They try to distract you. They actually try to hide the truth from you. That stops. That stops with you and me here and now. We're never going to study our constitutions. Amen? Amen. We're going to even go back and look at the Declaration of Independence. Amen? Amen. In fact, I would even tell you, if you really want to get in deep, you may not want to, but if you really want to get in deep, go to Magna Carta. It's only about 1,000 years old, but it has been the basis of human rights and laws and issues that we live with today. So I met with Josh and I told him, says, Josh, I got this thing I'm thinking about. It's called notice and affidavits. Because it is the very basis of how our system works. I'll get into it in a minute. And remember I said, I told God I'll go, but go with me, but then I found out he's already there? Think about this. Josh, when we met, Josh came to me, well, there's another man I want to meet with us too. His name is Jim Manning. I call him Doc. Sitting right there. So Doc comes to this meeting, and I really didn't care much about what Jimmy and Josh was talking about, because when we him got together, we're on the same page. Isn't it funny how God brings like minds and people together with a kindred spirit, and maybe a talent or two here and there that we can enhance for one each other and to further our cause? Yeah. That's a God thing. Yep. Yeah. So Doc and I started, this guy is my best friend. I love this man. He works so hard, so diligently, with people around the nation. He's gotten me on some of those sites, and man, my head swims, Doc. It's so much going on. Writing a notice and an affidavit. So we began this plan. We got with the other guys, and we began this plan. And it's only been in 5 weeks now installed. Can you believe it's only been 5 weeks that we began? And then a lot of people say, well, how long is this going to take? I don't know. But I've seen how it works for recalls, and recalls you got to go through the same processes plus more. We just saw that with our Gag and Newsom. And with the way our voting system is right here in Tulare County, by the way, people, Dominion is here. There's no way that you have a guarantee of anything. You can go away with all kinds of other plans, but this is the plan that we set in motion. And I want to go through that with you today, and then I'm going to show you a little bit out of the letter. And it says, this basically is the plan. Since this began, we made multiple letters with citing law, real law, for declinations. And I know these declinations, I'm talking about letters to your employer, I'm talking about letters to your schools, meaning you're declining to go by their order. They work. They have worked. I'm testimonial for where I work. I'm in the medical field. I'm not a scientist, though. That just means I work for a medical facility. And that's where they were hammering real hard at, remember? But in my medical place where I work at, I sent them a letter of declination, and I sent them another. I never got to the affidavit part when they had me in front of a big long boardroom in HR. And we walked inside and they said, sit anywhere. I took the one on the end. They're all sitting down. I got VPs all over the place here. My supervisor, and then our director of our department. And they're saying, well, James, we want you to know that you have been heard, and that's very important. We want to make sure that you know we heard you. Did you? There's two things that I want to make clear. In that room, I didn't know what was going to happen. I had guys on my crew that I was talking to, and only one of the guys followed after me after that meeting. Everybody thought I was going to get fired. And I told my wife was stressed. I worked hard to get where I am in that job, and I might be losing it. But I was straightforward with them. These are my words, these are my beliefs, and this is the way it's going to be, and I'm not changing. I'm still working there. And I recognize the fact, I recognize the fact is that, you know what, it may be scary, it may be something that you may have to look at maybe giving up in your life, but the stand still needs to be made, no matter what happens after.
Yeah.
I am on course for the rest of my life for civil rights. Because our country is so screwed up. As a grandparent, and I've got a lot of grandkids. As a grandparent, Bruce, I'm with you, brother. I want to be on the right side of history when they're standing over my graveside. I want them to be able to tell the truth about Grandpa, and not have to make up some kind of lie. I want them to know that I fought, and I sacrificed. I run a ranch. I work a full-time job. I have a wife, I have grandchildren and family. But I also have civil rights to be in front of you right now. This is the fight of the day. So we've done that. We've served out all those notice. We've made them available to anybody that wanted them. After 5 weeks, we have also served them on every single school board a notice of inquiry, and that was running the test ground. The inquiry was basically stating law again, but basically asking the questions that they won't answer, knowing that they would not answer. But we've seen some interesting things. They go on agenda, not on agenda, right? Not really. But it did its job. It showed their acquiescence, which I love this word because it's to our advantage. Then we have, in that 5 weeks, sent every single of our school boards what's called a notice to show clean hands and federal partnerships. Cease and desist order. Why does it say federal partnerships? Well, because Article 1, Section 10 has to do with unlawful treaties. And a lot of our boards have made unlawful treaties with the federal government and the UN and all these other places. I want to say China.
Yeah.
So we're looking into that. But here's the way the notice works. We give them the notice, and 9 times out of 10, the bad advice that they're getting from their attorney is just ignore it, it'll go away. I love that acquiescence. Then we have served Porterville an affidavit, the first one. Next couple of weeks, Exeter. And we're going to keep on going down the line. At some point in this next month, we're going to have all the affidavits served. And you know what their attorney is going to tell them? There's 2 ways that can happen. One is they're going to say, well, you know what? I don't know, it's getting pretty hot, because an affidavit is a sworn statement. And they're not just getting 1, by the way. They got 8 in Porterville. Sworn statement. It is upheld in court. And if you ignore it, brother, and you acquiesce, you have just admitted that I'm correct. And you can't argue that no more. See the power? That was what the Declaration of Independence was. Basically, they got to the end of it, and I'm going to use modern words, but the end of it to the king, after they stated all the wrongs done to them, is that you're fired. But I know that there's some questions about this, so I'm going to go ahead and try to hit those today. How much money has it cost us to do this, is one of the questions might be. I want to tell you something. Most things we do in life, we think we've got a campaign, bank loads of money, we're going to fight the fight. Right? It's been out of our own pocket. Basically, it's ink, paper, stamps, and a lot of nights up until 2 a.m. in the morning. You know? It hasn't cost us that much for the past 5 weeks. So we have those affidavits pending. How does it work? After all the districts are served affidavit, we go to the county. There's a reason for this whole plan. And separately from the county, a man by the name of Tim Heyer. Tim Heyer. You may have heard of him. Our final official complaint will then go, after they've ignored it, to the grand jury. How many of you served on the grand jury? You have? Are you on it now?
Already lined up.
Good. Good. Anybody else? All right. So the grand jury will receive the complaint for the county. We're going to hit the county level. And you might ask, well, what about all them affidavits from the local boards? Oh, they're going to be submitted in the complaint to the county. Every single one of our cities are going to be in that complaint, but the county is where the heads are. What did they say about taking the head of the snake off, right? Right. And Tim Heyer. So that complaint's going to go to them. That's probably, if I was going to give you a timeline on that, we're probably looking at around March. Somewhere in March, have all this completed. Because when we get to the county level, we only got to give them at least 2 weeks. I wouldn't give them any less than 2 weeks, but 2 weeks of our notice. And it goes into the county level and then to the grand jury about the end of March. How many do we need? How many affidavits do we need? That's kind of like asking the richest man in the world, how much money do you need? I mean, how many dollars do you need? One more? The more the merrier. But it only takes one complaint to the grand jury. It only takes one affidavit. It only takes one notice. Why do we want to impact it with so many more? It's because it gets their eyes on the issue. If you just have one citizen make a complaint, they may lay it aside and not even put it on the docket or the agenda. It's kind of like protesting. The more louder the people get, the more the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So that's why we're trying to collect as many as we can. And when we do things like this, and when we do a rally that we have coming up, and things like that, we are actually doing that to inform people, to equip people, but we're also doing it to get these affidavits signed. So if you haven't signed one, please find out where you can get one from us when we're having a meet with our notaries. By the way, how many notaries are in here? Doug? I'm sorry, I'm always recruiting, right? I'm a networker, I gotta find out where all the help's at. So, once that's done, the question might be, how many would I like to see? Well, I'd love to see 1,000 of those notices and affidavits go. I'd love to see that. But in the time that we have, I don't know if we can. Do you think we can?
Yes. We're mine too. That's right.
Do you believe that?
Affidavit parties.
Affidavit parties. So if you can commit to that, you know what that's going to take? It's going to take you to be one and to bring one. We've got to be witnesses. We've got to go into all of our communities and tell everybody and bring them together and have these parties set and be, I mean, that would be remarkable if we could do that. So while this is going on, at the same time, the process is beginning now already for Porterville and others for city councils. The process looks the same. It's not any different because it's what works. So that process is beginning. And in addition to providing letters for parents, we are providing letters for parents to make the local stands in their schools. Get with Greg. The doctrine of parental rights is all over it. The Nuremberg Code, the Article 6, Section 2, Article 6, Section 3. This is a notice of demand to desist further unconstitutional vaccine and mask mandates. You're going to find in here HIPAA law. You're going to find in here USC or Title 18 USC Section 241, conspiracy against rights. Title 18 USC 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. You're going to see in this letter that there is Title 18 USC Section 2071. And you're going to see what we've just been celebrating the past week. Title 2 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Section 201A. You're going to find Supreme Court of Delaware's ruling of Newmark versus Williams, 4th Amendment, 5th Amendment, 14th Amendment. You're going to see Title 42, Section 1983, which is civil action for deprivation of rights. Title 42, Section 1985, conspiracy to interfere with civil rights. And that's just to name a few. There's more on here. When you get into the constitutional studies, you're going to see all the Supreme Court rulers. Meyer versus Nebraska. Pierce versus Society of Sisters. Pierce versus Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Wisconsin versus Yoder. Cleveland Board of Education versus LaFleur. Moore versus East Cleveland. William versus Walcott. I'm going to just leave it there because I'm trying to push a point here to them. It's all on our side.
Marbury versus Madison.
Marbury versus Madison, that any law that is not Constitution is repugnant to the Constitution, is null and void.
Yeah.
Along in this plan, there's some things that have to take place, though, that are just as important. I could go along with the timeline. I said probably completed by March. We'll see. Does it matter as long as we win? Defaults, after that part is done with the affidavits, then there will be defaults that should be following that with the official complaint to the grand jury. Once they have the complaint, the grand jury are in charge. It costs us nothing to file with them. It costs us nothing while they're doing their investigation. They set their own agenda. Somebody once asked me not too long ago, does the DA run that? No, he is advisory on that. The grand jury is the people's court.
They can investigate the DA.
The DA is subject to the grand jury's investigation. So he's there kind of, what I say, a middleman between you and the judge, and also for exploratory, that if somebody, you want something, he has to subpoena it for you, correct? Yes. So there's the power again that our founding fathers set with the grand jury. It is the people's court. And they can investigate, actually they can investigate on their own. They don't even need a complaint. And part of their time they spend in board meetings, which we're already doing it anyways, city councils and so on and so forth. So there's the power of the people to the grand jury.
Do you do a notice of fault first?
A notice of default, then complaint. Yes.
A notice of fault. You complaint, fault, notice of fault, and then default. There's you have to have a particular amount of, in common law, you have to have a certain amount of days.
We give them 3 days.
We give them 3 days for the notice of what's our name of this? Estoppel.
Yeah.
Estoppel. And that's because that we've already exhausted through the paper line, through the notices, and then the affidavits, and then that notice, it's done. They can't change their mind at that point. We're going to go make a complaint. Now in civil law, there's certain days you have to give somebody if you're doing it for a civil thing, but this has to do with our governing boards under the Constitution. As a matter of fact, this system that we're using is used every day. We probably all used it at one point or another, whether it was real estate or banking or some other that sort of thing. So all this above process, there's one, but there's more than one front. And I want to give it to you this way. First of all, local engagement. That's grassroots. That's us, right? Local engagement. And that is making a case and instructing our government boards, which is our actual constitutional duty. Did you know that? It's our job to educate our leaders, our political leaders. That's why the Constitution in all 50 states agrees that all political power is inherent in the people. The second part is leadership. And I don't mean in our groups. I mean getting a grip. I mean taking the place of these officers and running for their offices. We need people out of this group, out of Tulare County that are in this fight to say, okay, I'll go. I'll sit on a school board. I'll run for a city council. I'll do that. Greg's doing that. I commend him for that. because nobody, I'm with you, the last thing I want to do is be a part of a political movement like that. But it is a duty that we need to take. And the final thing is legal, that's grand jury. If you haven't signed an affidavit or been part of this process, would you consider today, how many actually would consider today to go down to the courthouse and sign up and volunteer to be a grand juror? 1, 2, 3, just stand up. I'm going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to give you an award. Stand up. Right there, look at that. This is the power of the people. Now, in July, the grand jury will impanel again. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for standing up. So what I'm trying to get is a bigger picture here. So we're doing the grassroots work here, doing all the service and getting them up there and making a paper trail and making a case that's going to go to grand jury eventually. But what good does it do if it goes to a grand jury that's not sympathetic to the cause? Go down to Tulare County Courthouse, go to the jury place there, sign up, do it Monday, do it tomorrow. And then when you do it, we're going to use this kind of like when we get saved, right? When you do it, tell somebody, okay? And then leave it there. I'm going to do it. That's what I want to hear. Now, those three fronts is where we're fighting this battle. And then we also have the same thing when it comes to replacing these officers and taking their seats. This is an election year. It's an election year, and it has been disastrous for, I'm going to not get partisan, but the Democrat, or I'm going to say China Biden group. Okay? If there was a year that you were a conservative or a Republican and you could win, by gosh, it's now. Would you consider running? Is there anybody in here that ever thought about running for school board? Haha. What's stopping you? That's my question to any of us. What's stopping you? You have it. Huh? Nothing's going to stop me. Nothing's going to stop me. No. Nothing and no one is going to stop me. So, I'm not going to get into a whole bunch more. I think I've covered what I could on that. What we're dealing with is a world that is lost and a world that is broken. And it's up to God's people to bring it back to a healthy order.
Amen, brother.
There was once, Thomas Jefferson had once written this quote, and I want to make it clear. You'll hear words and you've heard words. We're at war. I agree. But it's not a war of flesh and blood.
Yeah.
It's an Ephesians 6:12 war.
It certainly is. Not of flesh and blood, but darkness and principalities. But we're also in a war of words and ideas. And who said wills? Say it again. Battle of wills. The will of God and the will of the enemy. The prince of darkness. So we've got to go out and be lights. Expose the darkness. This is what he said. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God.
That's right.
I'm going to leave you there with that today. Get your Constitution, even if you print it off your printer. Get yourself educated, equipped, informed, and then get engaged. If you're a parent and you want to stop the madness at your school, let's do it all together. Get this letter from Greg right back there. And do not fear. Do not fear.
And there's a city council meeting coming up on February 1st that we'd all like everyone to be a part of.
Guys, give it up for James. He has been a light. We appreciate it. I'm going to tell you, this was like taking information in with the fire hose, right? There was so much information today. And I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking around and pushing through it, because I know it's a lot. And we did run long. But at the same time, we're not ready to stop. If you guys still have questions, we want to open it up to you. If you have ideas, we want to hear them. If you want to get part of the leadership, let's see if we can make something happen. So it's now your floor. What can we do? We got one back here in the back. One second.
Guys, if you can give me 3 minutes, I promise I'll talk really fast, okay? I really appreciate, first of all, everybody being out here, and I am not from your community, so I thank you for listening to me. My name's T, and I'm bringing before you the subject of a very disturbing item on the agenda of Visalia City Council. A lot of you guys already know what this is. It appears that last month, the issues of a medical, air quotes, facility was to be brought up for discussion. It was delayed for a month due to the absence of a board member. However, it's going to be brought up again this month. On February 7th, it will be over there at the City Council meeting. Very, very vitally important that everybody attend, however many you can to attend. This medical facility is brought forth by Planned Parenthood. It's being masked, when in truth, it's an abortion clinic. I'm not out to offend anyone. Please forgive me if I do. I'm not out to offend anyone. I'm backing what Brother James just said to you here. This is a battle against good and evil, against the principalities of the darkness, the kingdom of the darkness. He wants to destroy your children, people. You understand? He wants to destroy your children. And he hates God's kids. Why does he hate God's kids? Because all of us were made in the image of God. Every last one of them were imprinted with God's image. And when we grow up, we become that force that goes against the enemy. We become that force that goes against all of this tyranny that is coming down the pike at us. So basically, in a nutshell, he wants to destroy them from, you guys have in your little pamphlets there, a very disturbing picture of a child at 10 weeks. Well, I just came back from a conference. This is what that little child at 10, 12 weeks is supposed to look like. This is what the enemy does not want to see. He is out to destroy them. Well, if he can't get those ones, he's going to go for these ones and these ones. And these ones over here. If you can't get them then you're going to get them now. So basically, if you'll allow me here, it's no covered secret that the tyranny has fallen on this country. That's what we're all here for. That's what we're all talking about. We're all living it. We're all affected by it. These heinous crimes against humanity don't stop. With the forced medical procedures that are coming up, it's up to us, the church, the body of Christ, those people who love their babies, who love their children, to come forward and to speak, to be that voice. I'm not going to go any further with that, but I just want to tell you guys, it's very vitally important. We need to stand strong. When we show up in numbers, we are heard. I also have here school choice. This school choice, we're trying to get it on the initiative for November. And if we can get that in there, I don't care what group you're with, I'll give you a handful of these. I'll show you really quick how to do it. I also have flyers here that explain the initiative. This is school choice. This money follows your child. And whatever you don't use that was for the education of that kid per year, whatever's it rolls over. It's not like what they do. Oh, you had your money and you didn't use it, so it's ours now. No, it goes over. It will roll over. So if you have any questions about that, please see me. Articles or State Senate 866. You guys all know what that is. That's the 12-year-old allowed to do anything they want to do. Stand up, hit your senators. It's on the feed. I've been putting all that on the feed, and also AB 1400. They're going to take away all of your medical insurance. What does that do? If you want insurance, now you have to do this. So please be aware. Please be present. It's so important. Please be present. You don't have to say anything. Us big mouths will say it for you. Anyway, I love you lots. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you very much. Those are things that we just can't miss. So thank you.
I have one concern.
Okay, go ahead.
So the city council, you said is on the 7th?
Yes, Visalia City Council is on the 7th of February. I have that information. I have on the phone. I don't want to take up any more time with you, but I'll get to you.
Okay, for our city council will be Tuesday, and that's great. Are we going at 6:30, right? We don't go before 6:30? For our city council on Tuesday.
Yeah, you can speak at 5:30, but you're supposed to speak to the agenda.
Okay, however many can show up at 6:30, let's be there with this one at city council on Tuesday night.
Right. It's at Monday, February 7th at 7 p.m. at Lyceum City Hall, which is on the CTF.
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'm gonna hand it over to Ray.
Hi guys, I'm Ray Beltran. I run Porterville FY here in Porterville. We got like 8,000 people. We try to get the message out, but try to be not political because just it's informational. But I support this group. I support a lot of the cause, and I try to be careful in passing that message on without. I'm not trying to not offend anybody, but I'm trying to secretly, subliminally give them this message that we have rights, we have freedoms. But one, Greg, thank you for the letter that you're going to provide for people. That's something I've been looking for. Thank you, Mountain Man. I forgot your name for all that information. That I'm looking for that need to educate myself and others. But real quick on the City Council for City of Porterville, they announced that they are no longer going to be meeting in person. It's going to be over Zoom. They're slating in September of 2021 because of the emergency order. That's the reason for they're not doing it in person anymore. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying they are and we know why. It's because of that. They're afraid of people showing up without masks and risking a citation just to prove their tyranny. But I just want to inform you, we got to figure out another way to either stand out there or when they do physically allow us to physically show up. But so
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you so much, Ray. That's important. Here's one thing I want to let you guys hear. Okay, this is Joseph. He was at the school board meeting the other day, and he just laid it on them. He's not prepared with what he did other than that. He is behind the scenes running all your COVID tests, right? So he is in the lab, and he has a prediction, and he's going to tell you what's really happening in Tulare County.
Yeah, I want to tell you, all I am is a numbers nerd who has a backing in medical science. I've been a laboratory scientist for 28 years. 2 years ago, I said I'm supposed to look at these numbers. I have no idea why, but I've been looking at them every single day. And I know how to make predictions. I know how to use the numbers, watch the trends, the data, all of what they were saying that they were going to do. And I said, this sounds like a great idea. They're going to change things. They're going to do it based on the numbers. Well, what the numbers are telling me and should be telling all of you, and if you look at the numbers, first of all, the vaccine does not work. The vaccine is done working. It worked perfectly against the Alpha variant. There's not been an Alpha variant transmission in the entire United States since September. Okay, so the virus that it worked against has been mutated, if you want to say that. There are 35 different spike proteins that changed from the Alpha to now the Omicron. If you look at the hyper-vaccinated counties or hyper-vaccinated states, they are not doing any better than the states that are under-vaccinated or the counties that are under-vaccinated. I take the data, I put it out there, I say somebody look at it. Now, I disagree with anybody that says that there are a lot of people in favor of masks. That's a biased survey. They should have had a real survey. Numbers geek, I mean, I want to see a survey. I want to know how many teachers want masks in the class. I want to know how many students want masks in the class. I want to know how many parents want masks in the class. And if the numbers say masks in class, then hey, we got to go with it.
No choice.
Exactly.
I believe just the numbers should speak. I believe the vote should speak. But we cannot get these numbers discussed. When I discuss numbers, okay, well, here's the numbers that are really important. Nobody's talking about the numbers going down. They just talk about the numbers going up. In the states of New Jersey, New York, and Maryland, cases are down 80% in the last 17 days. 80%. That means that this is not a flatten the curve moment. That's going to be a rail driven into the ground. it's gonna go flatline, zero, eradicated, extinct. Now, California is a couple weeks behind. My prediction, by March 1st, this ends. So all of these doing Zoom conference, whatever meetings, okay, we're gonna miss one meeting or two. But this ends on March 1st. I've stood in front of everybody, I've been making this prediction for 3 weeks, and everything looks right. The curve is falling. We are down 20% in California now over the last 10 days, and that 20% is gonna go another 50%, and then it's just going to zero on March 1st. If I'm wrong, I said it publicly. If I'm right, you can thank me later. God bless you all.
I love it. Thank you for that. See, that's having the real inside knowledge. We don't need Sacramento to be telling us this information when we have it right here in our backyard. Okay. Who else would like to have a question or would like to talk or get their voice heard? No. That's a beacon open.
He kept it open the entire.
He kept it open the entire time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a copy of the 5-hour congressional hearing with the doctors that have dealt with thousands of patients of COVID. COVID's been with us for 2,000 years. Eradication is just insane if you really think it's going to happen. But
No, it's happening.
if you want,
The outlet has been eradicated.
oh,
Total Omicron.
and anyway, we're still going to have viruses. It's just going to happen. Anyway, anyone who wants a copy of that, give me your name and email or phone number, and I'll try to get you a DVD.
Thank you. Put my name down on that. That was a good report. So we're going to hand back over to you, and I know we're coming to a close here, so I'll hand it back over to Ed as we close this up.
Hey, we went long. Thank you, everybody, for staying as long as you did. We went real long today. I really appreciate you coming. The message is clear. We all have to work together. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you on the next one. Stay strong. Stay together. Remember, it's all about the spiritual battle.
Sorry.